This time I'm going to show you how to do a chi-square test of independence with SPSS. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to test whether preference for fiction and nonfiction is related to sex, male versus female, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. We're going to do this like this. Analyze, descriptive statistics, crosstabs. All right, and then we're going to put one variable in the rows field, put sex there. Remember, we can right click and select display variable names to be able to see more clearly, and fiction versus nonfiction in the column field. Okay, so the hypothesis is that sex is not related to preference for fiction versus nonfiction. Now, research suggests that males are more likely to read nonfiction than females are. Okay, so we could hypothesize that, or just that they will not be independent, right? So next you select statistics, click on statistics, select chi-square. That's all we're going to worry about for this course, and then continue. Next, we want to select cells, okay? By default, SPSS will give you the observed value, but it's a good idea to also select expected. So how many would you expect were they independent, right? And then you can also select, if you want, the percentages for rows and columns and total. We're going to select all of that so we can look at it. Then we hit continue. Okay. And then once again, okay. Okay, so here is the output. All right. So first we can see our summary. There are 203 people total, right? 8 people, 8 cases were missing. Right. Then we can see over here, we have sex on by row, male versus female. Let's get okay, so sex is here, male, female by row, and then the columns are which type of book do you read most often, nonfiction and fiction, right? Okay, so we can see the expected count is how many we would expect should the proportions be according to, should they be independent? So the two variables be independent. So this takes into account that there are overall fewer males than females in the data set. So altogether, okay, there are 48 males and 155 females, right? Can you see that? So altogether, there are 58 people who preferred fiction, nonfiction, and 145 people who preferred fiction, right? We can see that if the two variables were independent, we would expect that 13.7 males would prefer nonfiction, right? But really, the amount that really did, the real count, the observed count is 18. We would have expected 4.3 males to prefer fiction. In fact, there were fewer males who preferred fiction. So far it does look like males are a little bit more likely to prefer nonfiction, but we don't know if this is a statistically significant thing here, right? We could go down to females. We would expect 44.3 to prefer nonfiction, actually fewer, only 40 did. We would expect 110.7 to prefer fiction, and actually more, 115 did, right? We can also see the percentages by category here, right? So let's clear this. Scroll down now to see whether these differences here were statistically significant. And we can see that here's our Pearson's chi-square value, which is what we're going to look at here, 2.456, degrees of freedom equals 1. Okay, for the two-sided test, right? It was not statistically significant. The p-value is greater than our alpha level at 0.05. So we would fail to reject the null hypothesis and conclude that sex and reading fiction versus nonfictions are independent, or in other words, that there is no evidence that males are more likely to prefer nonfiction than females. All right.